At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability. ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Joining me now is Patrick Wood of Technocracy.news, Technocracy.news. All right, you sent me a video today, and I've watched almost all of it. Fascinating video. Technocracy, the first ever full-length professional documentary on the agenda, their vision, your future. I want to play a little bit of this, and then we'll have you respond. Sound good?
Cool.
All right, let's do it. Here we go, guys, in the control room.
Fantastic parable about the dehumanization of human beings. In the negative utopia described in my story, man has been subordinated to his own inventions. Science, technology, social organization, these things have ceased to serve man. They have become his masters.
Aldous Huxley's novel portrays a dystopian future under the dictatorship of a world state, where every aspect of human life is controlled, from laboratory creation to the grave. He described the story as fantasy, but later wrote, "The prophecies made in 1931 are coming true much sooner than I thought they would. The nightmare of total organization has emerged and is now awaiting us, just around the next corner."
With the rise of brain-computer interfaces and biometric sensors and so forth, all the bodies, all the brains would be connected together to a network, and you won't be able to survive if you're disconnected from the net.
All life on Earth is going to be radically changed.
It's a fusion of the physical, the digital, and the biological world. It's changing who we are.
These people have gotten to the point now where they are openly anti-human.
Everything will be monitored. The environmental consequences of every human action.
They cannot happen without digital ID.
Once the digital ID is in place, it's game over for humanity.
The ideology of a world dictated through science is deep-rooted. Almost a century ago, a movement was established in the United States, preaching that the population should be governed by an elite of selected experts, scientists, and academics, rather than democratically elected politicians. They called it technocracy.
These engineers and scientists from Columbia University promoted what they thought was going to be the replacement for capitalism and free enterprise. It's not going to be price-based economic system. It's going to be based on resources and energy, control over energy. They thought that science was the answer for everything. They didn't have any spiritual bone at all. You know, they were very mechanistic in their thinking.
The definition was clear.
Technocracy is the science of social engineering, the scientific operation of the entire social mechanism to produce and distribute goods and services to the entire population.
The movement was short-lived, but the principle never died. As we'll demonstrate, a stranglehold on policy and resources has always been the ambition of the powerful oligarchs behind many of today's world institutions.
It seems to me that there's a very strong drift in the direction of globalization, of the ultimate centralization of control in the hands of unelected officials at supranational organizations. The lust to control other human beings is a story as old as time.
They want all of the resources of the world in their pocket. They do not want you and me to have anything. It's in writing all over the World Economic Forum's website. By 2030, you will own nothing and be happy. That's an oxymoron. If you don't have anything in your name, you ain't going to be happy about it.
The World Economic Forum may have called that infamous phrase a prediction, but it translates as a statement of intent on behalf of its global power brokers.
The bigger picture is that an attempt is underway now to collapse liberal democracy and replace it with global technocracy. What I call an omni-war is now underway, which is to say that the transnational ruling class is literally, it's not a metaphor, is literally at war with the rest of humanity and has weaponized everything that it can.
This is a coup. They can remove the power from the parliament and the legislative branch and consolidate it into a monetary system which has complete control.
That control is now entirely achievable because the would-be controllers finally have the tools to execute it. Total surveillance, artificial intelligence, digital IDs, and central bank digital currencies.
All right, let's stop right there. The ability to control everything. Now, I had you on my radio show today at 1 o'clock Central, and I talked about the Hegelian dialectic process. Thesis and antithesis, idea, opposite idea, things colliding, fighting. And you manufacture those crises so that you get people to go to a third option that they would not go to without their own, without being pushed there. It's like George McGregor Burns, who I quote all the time, a globalist, wrote the book in 1984, The Power to Lead. The founding fathers have been too shrewd for us, too smart. A frail tinkering and bridges won't get the job done. We'll never get the people to go where we want them to go without a stupendous national crisis. And we see all kinds of crises. We went through some of them today. Terrorism, 9/11, drug crisis, immigration crisis, financial crisis, right? Nonstop crises. But I have to wonder, as I propose to you today, if some of this isn't what's going on in California, manufactured by powerful people with lots of money in order to merge us together into a North American union. Because how else can you get us all to agree to that? And then you have an economic crisis. And now you can start controlling everyone and everything and use the crisis and all the disruption and riots and chaos to even pitch the idea of freedom cities. Are you sick and tired of the riots, the troublemakers, the problems? We can control them if everybody gets a biometric, which is called for in 16.9 of Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN. And now we can have everybody crossing back and forth over the border with their biometrics. This video shows how this is all very possible. But you and I discussed how back in the 1930s, they already had the plan of a North American Union. Right, Patrick? The technocrats did?
They did, undoubtedly. It was all, in fact, it was all over their, even their book that was, this was published in 1934.
Yep.
The Technocracy Study Course. Just look at the cover. There it is. Just, you know, it's unmistakable. That was the North American Technate. You just, you know, I saw some media outlets grab that picture when Trump was talking about, you know, merging Canada and Panama, et cetera. Some outlets got that picture off of Google, posted it up. They didn't have a clue where it came from in the first place. They just put it up and said, well, here's the plan, folks. We're going to have Canada as the first 51st state. We're going to have Panama, and we're going to have Mexico probably in the thing as well, and maybe Greenland.
Oh, remember this. Joe Biden, Declaration of North America, 2023, not too long ago, right? President Trump,
yes.
Canada could become the 51st state. Don Jr. and Reps landing in Greenland. Panama Canal belongs to us. Panama Canal is considered a vital national asset for the United States. We got technocracy. And there you go. The technate of America.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, then today we have the president of the Senate of Mexico talking about, we talked about building the wall. And we're going to take Texas and New Mexico and Arizona and California. Well, you know, so thesis and antithesis, idea, opposite idea, fight, fight, fight. And now the solution is, let's just do this. We all are in trouble financially. We all have terrorism in our countries. We have the drug trade, all these things. Why don't we just all come together and build, instead of a 15-minute city, build a freedom block of America, Canada, and Mexico? I mean, I think we're being played to some degree, and I think a lot of this is orchestrated. Now, I don't know how much President Trump knows. I really don't. I mean, I think they played him with COVID. I think he knows that now. I think Ronald Reagan was played largely. Ronald Reagan was surrounded by a bunch of George H.W. Bush globalists, I think. So why would we think that Jimmy Carter was played? Why would we think that Donald Trump doesn't have people around him playing him? He didn't even know that the drones were going after Putin's helicopter, right? So the press told him. Why are they keeping him in the dark? Is this what you do when you try to keep people off balance, right? So the question is, does Donald Trump know what it is these people are doing? Or does he just see this from a good standpoint of national security, energy, and backing our collapsing dollar and fighting the BRICS banking system? If I had to guess tonight, I would say Donald Trump doesn't know the things you and I know, and he's being led down a path that people way above him, that he maybe doesn't even know about, that have often been called the power elite, have been planning for over 100 years, or about 100 years, since 1913 at least. What say you?
I think that's a good analysis. I've said for some time that the president is irrelevant on one hand. He's elected, of course. There's all the dissension and the arguments, political arguments before the election. It got him to where he is right now. But the presidents in the past have not been the substantive movers and shakers behind the scene. I think we're going to see this as we go on, but you're not going to find your answer looking to Trump at this point, whatever the case is. You should always look behind the scenes and figure out who are the actors that are moving blocks of things around to make things happen. And I don't think it's Trump at this point.
Who do you think it is?
Well, we know that the CIA is behind a lot of stuff. We know the military industrial complex is behind a lot of stuff. They're all chock full of technocrats, by the way. They're all unelected. They're unaccountable by and large. And so we see the military standing behind so many projects, even Operation Warp Speed, for instance. The manufacture of the vaccines were done by the military, not at there was a contract for the pharma companies to make vaccines, but it was all orchestrated by the military in the first place. Well, that was not brought out at first. People thought, well, it's going to be they're going to use the military to distribute the shots instead of using FedEx or UPS or whatever, right, or Amazon. But there was a big story behind that where the military was involved from the get-go with the whole thing from the development of the virus in the first place to the development of the solution to the virus. So, we see the CIA even now behind Palantir, for instance. Palantir was a creation of the CIA in the early 2000s. The Palantir, that's Peter Thiel's firm. Palantir was basically just a creation of the CIA. They put money into the company, and they provided the architecture that they wanted to build. They let them run wild with it at that point, but that was the only entity, the only client that Palantir had for some years. So at this point, you can see the same thread is coming at us with, for instance, Palantir now being selected to be the master organizer of data for the government.
And to create a file in every American. And if you were to use that to create a file in every American, couldn't you use that as their biometrics and going back and forth between Canada and America, America and Mexico? Yes. I mean, this would solve a lot of problems in the minds of, Americans, when it's pitched to them for people,
Yes.
maybe voter fraud, down to people double dipping on their entitlement programs, which they're not entitled to, but that's what they call them.
Yes.
I mean, there's all kinds of things, right? Out of the chaos comes the science. And that's interesting because you and I have discussed that, right? Remember this book?
Yes.
Science versus Chaos by Howard Scott, Technocracy, Inc. That was back in 1933, right?
Yeah.
And isn't that what's happening? They're using the
exactly.
chaos, and then they're going to offer up behavioral sciences as the solution.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly so. This has been happening for a long time, for sure. We saw it, and we talked about 9/11 and how that played into the whole reformation of the intelligence community in America. We saw that it produced the Patriot Act that's still with us today. They said, well, we have a war against terrorism now. They haven't hardly caught any terrorists in the meantime, but nevertheless, the entire population is subject to search and seizure at any point at this point. So, the problem, reaction, solution, it can be used anywhere in any situation to achieve their agenda.
Now, I know that they've tried to use climate change as the big boogeyman. When we come back from this break, I want to ask you if they have to switch directions on that. Because a lot of people aren't buying into the climate change hoax. So is this why they're switching to terrorism, to pandemics, financial collapse? Let's talk about that on the other side. My guest is Patrick Wood of Technocracy.news. Technocracy.news. All right. Now, again, folks, if you appreciate all we're doing and putting out to you free of charge, we need your support. Consider going, will you? Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com, so we can keep all this great information going. Thank you for that. We'll be right back after this break. Don't go away.
I'll tell you one little quick story. We had a Worldview Weekend client who lived in California, lost their house. Very wealthy guy. He didn't use Bitcoin. He came over here, drove to Arizona with $286,000 worth of his gold because he had no money and no house available. His bank was shut down because he couldn't have access to his bank account.
Was this during the fire? Was this during the fires?
During the fire. Didn't have his driver's license. He lost it. The state wouldn't give him a new license because he had no active mailing address. Real mess. So he came to Arizona to buy a house. He's moving everything over. He said, the only thing I got in my possession that I can get liquid with right now is my gold. I gave him a check for $286,000, and guess what? I didn't need his social, his driver's license. Sort of smiled, and I said, you know, I know you and Brandon talked about how this worked, but boy, this is great. I feel good. I got my money. Nobody bothered me, and I'm protected, and it's private.
Just simply go to worldviewgold.com, fill out the form, worldviewgold.com.
Looking for a trusted source to understand today's world through a Christian worldview? Worldview Tube is built on the 35 years of Worldview books, columns, research, and high-profile interviews of Brannon House. Want to know more about Worldview Tube, its founder, history, team, and mission? Visit worldviewtube.com/about. That's worldviewtube.com/about. Worldview Tube is your source for understanding the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
And welcome back. Glad you are with us. Joining me is Patrick Wood of Technocracy.news. Patrick, I know that they want to make this the boogeyman to be global warming, to get everybody to surrender their rights. I think there's too much science out there that shows that there is not man-made apocalyptic global warming. So, are they going to stay on that one, or are they going to switch to pandemics, viruses, plagues, financial collapse, World War III, terrorism, biological weapons. Now, those things have a great way of getting people to move and act, not global warming. I think they're going to have to do better than that. Are they willing to change their course? And is that why we saw the coronavirus, the pandemic?
Trend changing in 2020 when all of the universities who were pumping out the studies saying that the polar ice caps are going to melt and that, we're all going to die, the seas are going to rise. All these people in universities around the world, especially in England, all of a sudden they all flopped over into the COVID area to produce studies now supporting COVID. Well, that was a sure sign to me, and I saw these people by name. I recognized the names of the people who were producing the fear for the United Nations vis-a-vis climate change. I saw them by name, switching over to this new narrative, right? That was epic. So since then, you've seen the struggle to maintain climate change as a narrative is getting weaker and weaker as every day goes by. At this point now, the fear, the biggest fear that they have is all the dead bodies that could result from COVID or some other pandemic.
Mm-hmm. So, which is why
climate change,
which is why you see them strengthening the World Health Organization, which is under the direct control of the United Nations.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Remember, climate change never produced any dead bodies.
No,
it was all fear that something is going to happen in the future, but they never produced any dead bodies. Well, COVID took care of that problem.
Yeah, and World War III would do it. Cyber attacks would do it. Biological warfare would do it. World War III would do it. There's a lot of things, and those are all in play right now, right? Look at a little bit more of this, the agenda, their vision, your future, which Patrick Wood is in. Here we go. Watch a little more of this.
Institutions, banking, education, and global politics. The Rockefellers always believed in world governance. In the 1950s, their Special Studies Project report declared,
"The UN stands finally as a symbol of the world order that will one day be built."
In 1973, David Rockefeller co-founded a non-governmental organization which still carries international power today, the Trilateral Commission. Its stated objectives revived technocracy and in turn planted the seeds of the UN's Sustainable Development Agenda.
They said at the time that they were going to create a new international economic order. It was all over the literature. The goal of the new international economic order was not to get richer in the sense of money. They knew even back then that eventually the fiat currency system of the world was going to disintegrate. So the goal became to actually capture the physical resources of the world. All wealth historically has come out of the ground. They wanted to take away everything that they could possibly take away from the nation states of the world and from private individuals of the world and stuff it into the global common trust where they would administrate it and they would be the ones getting licenses for the resources to turn around and make stuff.
The financial kingpins have long seen themselves as masters of the universe, manipulating global affairs through institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Is Agenda 2030 the defining act for complete control? And how significant was the global response to COVID-19?
As the world builds back from COVID-19, we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make investments that will strengthen the economy and improve public health, and fight climate change for generations to come.
One might ask why the UN needs a multi-billionaire finance and media player as a special envoy, or why Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of England, who called for a new global monetary system, is the UN's special envoy for climate action and finance. And then there's Larry Fink, the boss of BlackRock, the world's largest asset management company. He's a board member of the World Economic Forum, and as we'll see, has driven the UN's goals through investment strategies for the past 20 years. All three are principles of the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, a partnership with the UN. With the green economy worth trillions to corporations and investors alike, it's hard not to see a conflict of interests. Are the bankers raising money to achieve United Nations goals? Or are the goals a Trojan horse to change the world's financial control systems?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. And isn't it interesting? Mark Carney is now the Prime Minister of Canada, correct, Patrick?
That's right.
So you got a major player set up to help them push the North American Union. I really think that's where we're going. I think we're the only broadcast. I think we're the only broadcast explaining the Hegelian dialectic process, thesis and antithesis, idea, opposite idea, the conflict, the change comes from the conflict, and that what's going on in LA and about to spread around the world, around the country, and it's in other places as well, by the way. You're seeing it in other parts of the world this week where people are rioting over the immigrants. UK has seen some of this too in the last few months. People are sick of this, all right? And this was all done on purpose. Spreading all these people all over the world to create this chaos was all done deliberately on purpose. So what is a solution? Biometric everybody and get them under control, right? And then by doing that, they've also destroyed the Western cultures. They've so flooded those countries that they're losing their culture. We're losing our culture here in America very, very quickly. You go to Minneapolis, it doesn't look like a Norwegian, Scandinavian state that I once lived in. It looks like the Middle East, right? This is the case all over the country. But what's going on in California, and I think one of the few people explaining this, what's going on in California and all the Mexican flags, who is getting them to all wave those Mexican flags? Why are they not waving the Palestinian flags? Why was it not the Black Lives Matter flag? Now all of a sudden it's the Mexican flag. Why? Why? Well, because it's about immigration. Yes, but who sparked all this, had the signs already ready to go, and funded it with everybody running to the street when they were told to? Because the narrative is this conflict between Mexico and America. And you've got the president of the Senate of Mexico saying, well, we actually own all these states anyway. You guys stole it from us. You've got the president of Mexico encouraging these things. She's being called out in the Oval Office by the Secretary of Homeland Security, standing next to the Resolute desk yesterday. This seems awfully scripted now, and for there to be some kind of way to out of the chaos bring a North American Union. Am I on the right track?
I think so. And don't forget the dump trucks of bricks and rocks that have been delivered to those protesters in L.A. They just showed up on the street magically, just in time for the protesters to pick them up and start throwing them at the police.
Yes.
As they were waving their flags, of course. Somebody had to pay for those dump trucks and the rocks and the bricks and whatever. And somehow they just, they get a free pass. Well, you can see the piles of rocks, in fact, but you don't see the license plates of the trucks that came and dumped them in the first place, right? This is very, very suspicious.
We're also, by the way, being told that there are more and more folks that are queuing up. They're queuing up. This is from Hernando RC, who I've interviewed several times. Hernando RC, he writes this. Let's see here. Breaking news. This clip is not from last year. It's from this past week. There are reportedly hundreds of thousands of migrants that are scattered all over Mexico, waiting for the signal to surge our borders again. These dirty international non-government organizations are still being funded and operating like a business as usual. Something is brewing up there. The left still have their crosshairs on removing Trump by any means necessary, and then it goes on from there. But the reality is we've got video footage from Hernando RC. If you guys can come back to me. And I want to play some of that for you real quick. Here we go.
Reporting live from Tapachula, Texas. When you hear people like Kristi Noem telling us that the border is closed, and you're taking a look at what I'm showing you guys right here. Does this look like the Mexico border's closed? Does this look like the Mexican president is trying to slow down the flow of immigration? America, wake up. There is a tsunami of migrants just over our border, waiting to invade, waiting for President Trump to be removed from office, waiting for this regime change operation to take place so that they can install the next rhino sleazebag sellout who's going to open the floodgates, and the gates of hell are going to open upon our country. You should pray that President Trump survives this regime change that Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats are carrying out, because if they do not, this is what's coming, America. Wake up.
There we go. Thoughts, please?
There you go. There's nothing to say. It's stunning.
Yep. Technocracy.news, technocracy.news, the Hegelian Dialectic. Folks, don't be distracted by the game on the ground. Look at what's going on up above. Read their papers, their reports, and how they are navigating people with emotion and fear. Brainwashing, emotion and fear. The Tavistock Institute. The Tavistock Institute. It's all in my documentary, Brainwashed America, Part 1 and 2. And it's also at technocracy.news, technocracy.news. As always, Patrick, thank you for being with us.
You bet. Thank you.
We'll be right back after this break.
Better science leads to better outcomes. So by understanding the science in much more intimate detail, delivering a value product that is so different from anybody else.
So when we're stepping outside into seasonal changes, low humidity, sunlight, pollution, all of these things get communicated as stress on the top layer of skin that produces free radicals, and they're bad news for collagen networks. They're going to break down the collagen network and collapse that beautiful tensile strength of your skin. And so that's how we end up with fine lines and wrinkles. Bella Grace is really an elevated formula.
Better than the competition for very obvious reasons. First of all, we're delivering great collagen. We're delivering Verisol, which is the world's most studied form of collagen. So we're starting at a foundation that's really top-notch.
So here is a lady today. She's taken the elixir, arthritis in her hands. She could not close her hands and make a fist. But after now being on the elixir, now she can.
The real breakthrough discovery, particularly with the cat's claw, it's a switch that regulates genes. There's thousands of genes that are involved in that inflammation process. When you have chronic inflammation, the problem is the switch is on and it's not being turned off. And so what's happening with the cat's claw is that it removes that little protein switch off your DNA, and the genes go back to a dormant state, and you go back to being, well, really healthy.
When at first we wanted to just have an amazing collagen ingestible product to be able to set the skin up so that my wife, Christina, could come behind that with incredible skincare. And that's exactly what we're still doing. What we weren't anticipating was the magnitude and just the vast amount of benefits that this elixir was going to do for people. Testimonies started flooding back in. About probably 30% of the testimonies were about hair, skin, and nails. The others were about people being able to walk up their stairs again, people being able to open their hands in the morning without having to do heat therapy, people being able to sleep better, athletes before and after recovery, and the energy levels that people were having. So we realized that this is so much more than just a collagen ingestible product, which it certainly is that at the highest of levels. We've even had so many people in the health and wellness world say this is legitimately, Brian, the number one, the best health and wellness product that's ever been introduced. And I would say probably the only negative here with Bella Grace and this elixir is that it sounds too good to be true, but it really is true.
Bella Grace Elixir, a scientific breakthrough with over 80 clinical trials. Visit melissahousebg.com to discover Bella Grace Elixir and the full range of Bella Grace products.